All right, well, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. This is our 19th webinar, I do believe. So we're getting quite a library of them there. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Russell Cummings. I'm a business consultant and coach based in Bundaberg in Queensland. And I work with privately owned and family businesses to help them achieve their goals through, I guess, focusing on strategic planning, coaching support for implementation, and then lastly around improving skills through training and development. They're the three sort of legs to the stool. And work across businesses across a wide range of industries. Some of you will be here today via the Horticulture the Next Generation program. So I'm the project leader for that, and it's a leadership program funded by Horticulture Australia Limited, and it's aimed to improve the leadership of Australian horticulture. So thank you if you're joining us today from Horticulture the Next Generation. So there's a workbook. We've produced a workbook for you to take some notes in and do a couple of exercises in. You can download that if you look in the chat area. If you haven't already downloaded the workbook, you can download it through the link in the chat area. And you'll also be able to download that from the page with the recording, so there's no drama to do that right away. And as I mentioned, we are recording this one. So today, what are we going to talk about? So I guess I want to talk to you about moving from marketing, which is what I see as a highly strategic activity. So marketing is a very strategic activity, to more an operational level, which is around sales and promotional activity in your business, and getting the linkages between those things right so that we start to drive activity in our business. The sequence that I'm going to take you through today, a sequence of tools and I guess a little process, is one that I use in my business, and I've used it for a number of years now, and it's one that I use with my regular coaching clients. So anybody who's a long-term coaching client of mine will be familiar with this, and we'll be working through that process. So let's just talk briefly about where we're at here. So what I find is that we need to link marketing and sales. In too many businesses, marketing and sales are unlinked, and we don't sort of get the synergies that we could be getting out of better linkages in those processes. Now, as I mentioned, marketing is a very strategic process. So it's a strategic process where we're aiming to set some direction and a real strategy for our business. And we've covered a number of elements of marketing in previous webinars. So James is actually joining us here this afternoon, but James Atkins has been a fantastic resource for us there, and he's done a couple of great webinars for us on marketing and developing your marketing strategy. Can highly recommend James as a consultant. So if you'd like to really get stuck into your marketing, here's the man to see, and I can put you in touch with him. But we're not going to talk about marketing strategy today. We're going to talk about how we actually turn it into action. Now, the point of having a strategy is that your marketing strategy sets the direction, which then allows you to develop your promotional plan. How are we going to promote this, and what are we going to do? And I think the important thing is that we should be linking our marketing, promotions, and sales together, so it's a coordinated effort across our business. Now, the tool sequence that I'm going to talk about here today is taking you from your marketing plans to sales. And there are sort of 4 steps. The first thing is you need to understand your product or your service offer. So what is it that you're taking to the marketplace? And it could be a range of products, it could be services, it could be a combination of product and service. All right, but you need to understand what your offer is that you're taking to the marketplace. Now, we're not, as I mentioned, that's what marketing is. It's really about getting that right. So we're not going to cover that today, but it's the starting point. So you need to be clear, what's our product, service, offer? What are we taking to the market? My step then is to say we need to then convert that into some sort of income or sales or revenue matrix. So in order to get some linkages and between different parts of our business, we need to break our revenue plan down into some chunks that we can then link into a promotional plan. Okay, I find too many businesses we don't do that well. Once we've got our revenue plan mapped out, then we can start to think about how we're going to promote that, so how we're going to take it to the marketplace, and then lastly, what does our sales pipeline look like, and start to track activity through a sales pipeline. So let's work through each of these elements in detail. So the first one's an income matrix. So an income matrix for me is something that breaks down our big targets into small chunks. Yeah. So I find too many businesses set targets where we're going to have, $100 million in sales or $10 million in sales or $1.8 million in sales, as this example is. It might be $200,000 in sales. It doesn't matter. Sometimes that's an unrealistic challenge for us. And if we break it down into small chunks, then we can actually get our head around it and start to do something, I guess, a bit more useful with it. And this example here, I guess, is of a typical income matrix. Now, the spreadsheet that I'll actually give you, which has sales pipeline and some other stuff, actually has an income matrix on it as well. So you can build your own income matrix in that spreadsheet. The components of an income matrix, for me, across the top, you need to have your client groups. So I've got them as client 1, 2, 3, 4 there, but they're really client groups. You want to group your clients up into big chunks of like ones. So if you're a manufacturer, your client groupings could be, Woolworths, Coles, Aldi, independents, other channels. If you're in a service industry, they could be, SME businesses, corporate, government, and not-for-profits. If you're in a horticultural business, domestic horticultural business, your channels or your client groups could be Woolworths, Coles, agents, and direct sales. If you're an export horticulture business, it could be something like, domestic sales, China, Japan, Singapore, Russia. Could be your core target areas where you're going to focus. Now, I've got, in this example here, there's only 4 client groups. You could have more. My advice is keep it tight so that you don't get lost in the detail again. On the left-hand side of our matrix then is where we put our product. And in this example here, it's a service industry example, but you have projects down the side and we break those chunks up. Again, you want your products to be product groups or large things. You don't want to have your products as too much detail. You don't want to put every SKU down. You just want to have your large product areas here. So, if you're in a horticultural business, again, these could be varietal groups or quality levels or something else. As well as products, then we need to include the unit value or the average value of a sale. So for each sale, now you may want to do that by project, per day, per whatever unit value. It might be per client, could be a good way to do it. If you're a horticultural business, it could be per tray or per carton or per pallet or per container. It doesn't really matter. Something that's relevant to you and gives you the detail at the right level. Then you simply go across, and in the middle here you can see there's a series of numbers, and they're just the quantities of each of those products that we will sell to that client group. So across the top there, you see we've got 3 large projects. They're $500,000 each. We'd like to sell 1 to our client group 1, client group 2, and client group 4. Okay. The $60,000 other 2 product, we're seeing we might potentially sell 2 of those into our client group 2. So you map out your matrix to get an overview of what it's going to look like, and then it adds up the sales for you. So the aim is to develop a simple plan for your revenue budgets, to break them down into manageable chunks so that you can actually get your head around what it is we're trying to do. So break them down into chunks and say, okay, that's what we're going to do. So in this example here, you can see if our target is $1.8 million and $1.5 million is going to come from 3 large projects, all our focus needs to be in our marketing and our development needs to be in landing those 3 big projects. Okay. Now, if your business is slightly different, it may be a lot more spread out than this. This is not a live example, it's just a made up one, so it's skewed horribly to the large project end. But you may have a far more balanced model, but it may say, right, I need to go and sell X number of product to this particular client, or how can we move a certain volume of fruit or vegetables or whatever, or plants through a particular channel or whatever we're looking for. So that's the income matrix. All right, so on page 5 of your workbook, page 5 of your workbook, I've lost a slide here. Oh, here it is. It's the right slide. So on page 5 of your workbook, I'd like you to do a quick exercise for me. There's a blank income matrix there for you in your book. And what I'd like you to do is, you won't have time to fill the whole thing out, but I'd like you to is just take a couple of minutes and go, righto, here's a couple of major client groups for me, or here's a couple of big product groupings that I could do. So do one or the other. Just take 2 minutes and sort of map those out. when you've actually got some examples down, you might like to share them. If you want to type them into the question area, and then we can get a bit of feedback from what people are looking at across their businesses as key target areas or key product or project or service areas, if you like. All right, so we'll take 2 minutes to do that. If you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, then please just press pause, complete the exercise, and then press play again when you're ready to start. Thanks. So I've got a question here. Where does profitability fit in versus just revenue? Good question. I mean, this is a revenue plan for your business about where you want to go and get your revenue. I'm assuming you've actually thought about profitability when you're putting your product and service offer together, and that your products and your services actually make you some money. You might find there's differences in profitability between delivering a particular product to a particular client, but I'd be taking that into consideration in terms of of your model. For instance, you may have domestic versus export customers, and you may make less margin on your export, or the other way around, and therefore you may skew your production one way or the other, and that's why you break this down a little bit. So notionally, I would take profitability into consideration, but initially just start with the revenue and get that right and get across your head. You could put instead of average value, if you wanted, you could put average margin if you wanted to. And down there, unit value times margin if you wanted to give you another calculation. I think most people find it easier to plan around sales than they do around net profit. So but then again, you may decide let's plan around net profitability and use that as somewhere to focus. So good question. Thanks, Tim. All right, so any examples? The only other example we had here was somebody who agreed with my one around delivering into Woolworths, Coles, and other supermarkets. But an income matrix, a really essential part of getting your plan right. The difference between it and a budget is you're actually just planning your revenue and getting your revenue right. Breaking it down by client and by product puts a bit more definition into what you want to do. All right, so let's move on. Quick game's a good game. So once you've got your revenue targets, once you got your revenue targets, then I guess moving on to how we're going to promote that is really important. So with your revenue targets sorted and you understand where your focus needs to be, then I think you can start to think about how you want to promote your business to get the desired result that you're looking for. And my promotional planning is really quite simple, and I focus on 3 key areas. And as I said, I've used this in my business, and I've used it to help clients grow their businesses. It doesn't matter what sort of business. I find these 3 areas are still relevant, but the emphasis that you put into each of the 3 areas will vary depending on your business, on your customer base, and the products and services that you deliver. So let's just look at them. So the 3 areas I find that we need to do some networking, all right? And this networking is where we go out and meet people and build our network of contacts for our business. So that's really important, because it's at these networking events that we pick up new customers, we pick up new referral sources or centers of influence, and we build a profile for our business. So it's really important that you do some networking. Now, it's important that if you're going to do networking, you do it at a place where there's customers, not necessarily where there are competitors. So you may have some competitors there, but I find too many people think they're doing networking when they go to the local trade association meeting and catch up with all the other tradespeople in their group. I'm not talking about that sort of networking. That's more professional development. What I'm talking about here is business development and going and finding potential customers for your business. Now, that could take the form of networking at industry groups, trade shows, local chambers of commerce, industry conferences, those sorts of things, anywhere where your target market congregates. Okay. Do some networking. A couple of things need to happen. You need to do some follow-up, and that's what I call this one-on-one. So it's about following up from networking. If you're going to go networking, you're going to collect some business cards, you're going to make some contacts, you're going to need to follow up with some of those people and have some personal contact with them. Now, that could be a phone call, it could be a Skype call, it could be a coffee, a lunch, or a dinner. It could be any sort of meeting, but it's sort of follow up from that. It's also about targeting centers of influence, so people who are likely to refer people to you and your business, or are likely to sell on your behalf. So if you're in horticulture, it could be agents or somebody else that you need to go and talk to. So make sure you do some one-on-one stuff as well, and that can be involved going to events, and if you have to, you can go to the rugby or the footy or whatever. Charity dinners, those sorts of things are all great networking opportunities, as well as one-on-one meetings. All right. The third area, and this is where most people put a lot of their effort, is into broadcast activities. So for me, broadcast activities includes things like radio, TV, print, Google AdWords, advertising, all that sort of stuff. But it also includes electronic newsletters. You may do client-specific newsletters if you're in a particular area or an industry group or particular sectors. You may want to do a special newsletter to that particular sector. It's about blog articles on your website. So websites are integral to this broadcast media in the near future. It can be video. It can be webinars like we're doing here today. It can be social media. And I think it's important that you understand what's the best medium for you to get out and meet with your target market. Not everybody will benefit from social media, particularly from Facebook or something else. There may be better options for you. LinkedIn may be a better option, or Pinterest may be better for you, rather than just saying, well, you have to be on Facebook. I don't believe that for a minute. All right, so they're the three areas. Now you need to work out where your priorities are and what are some of the things that you need to do there, and it needs to form part of a 90-day contact program. And we've talked about those before, and as I mentioned, my coaching clients will spend time mapping out our 90-day contact programs and putting those in place to make sure that we're systematically doing our networking and our broadcast activities. All right, chance for another little exercise here for you. I just want you to, and it's on page 7 of your workbook, I'd just really like you to write down at least 2 actions that you're going to take in each of those 3 areas. So what are 2 actions you can take to improve the level of networking? What are 2 actions you can take to do a little bit more one-on-one? And what are 2 broadcast actions that you might take in your business? Again, take 2 seconds to write them down and then start to post them in the questions area for me. Thanks, Chris, for posting the last one. It came up just as I moved on. But if you just take a couple of minutes and write down some of the things that you think you can do to help you grow your business through either networking, one-on-one, or broadcast activities. If you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, then please just press pause, complete the exercise, and then press play again when you're ready to start. Thanks. I'll just have to read them out for you. All right, so we've got networking. BNI meetings, a great one. So those of you who are in different businesses can really benefit from networking through BNI. It's a great concept. It's a highly rigid concept, but it works extremely well for those of you who are prepared to put the time and the energy into BNI. But it is a great time commitment. All right, any other activities that you're going to participate in? What about some of the broadcast activities you might do? Excellent. So broadcast, a monthly email newsletter. We've got videos. Here's one I haven't heard of. House and Pinterest. So visual social media. It's a growing media. Excellent. I'll have to look at House. So that's HOUZZ. Excellent. Thank you. Podcasts. So podcasting is a massive medium. I listen to lots of podcasts in the car. Some great people doing podcasting. And some really good stuff we can be doing there. All right, thank you very much. Lots of different, using Hootsuite, seminars for events. Great. Lots of activities, Scott. So thank you. It's really just important then that you get those activities and you break them down to a one-page plan and you start to actually do them. So at the end of this little seminar, I'd like you to just go back and review this. Write down 5 or 6 actions. You don't have to write down too many, but then go away and do them. No point putting this stuff up here and not not turning it into action. So that's the important part. All right, we're on the home straight here. So let's talk a little bit about then the third sort of thing. I'll talk about sales pipelines, and I'll show you an example pipeline in just a second, and we'll email that to you as well. You'll get it through the with the resources page. But there are lots of ways to do a sales pipeline, and a sales pipeline is just a way of tracking sales in your business in a systematic way. And most of the high-performing businesses that I've worked with, we put quite effective sales pipelines in place to actually drive them. Okay. All right, looks like it's all good. Let's go back. Sales pipelines, as I mentioned, most businesses that I work with, really effective businesses, have, I guess, great sales pipelines. Now, you can use a CRM or a customer relationship management system to track them. Many of those have sales pipelines built into them. You can use a spreadsheet. I use a spreadsheet in my business. It's just simple and easy. I've got clients and colleagues who use whiteboards, and they move post-it notes around on whiteboards, and it doesn't really matter, provided you get a system that works for you. Now, the important elements that I find in a sales pipeline, and I'll show you one in a minute, are you need to understand the stages of your sales process. So what are the various stages in your sales process? So in my business, I have sort of 4 stages. It starts off at the lower level, which I call ideas. And that's just concepts and ideas when we're talking to people about ideas, or I have some ideas for a client or something, and some things that I might be able to do with them. So the things that are not concrete or anything else. The next level up is what I call scoping, which is where I'm having a meaningful discussion with a prospect about a particular opportunity. So that's the next stage for me. The next stage then is proposal. So when I actually convert that job into that prospect, we agree on the terms, and I just summarize that in the proposal document, and then we either win or lose from there on. So there are 4 steps, ideas, scoping, proposal, and win. If you're going to say a horticultural business, then if you're in a horticultural business, then your pipeline could be something like this. You could have scoping, where you're actively talking to people. You can have an inquiry, which is a firm inquiry from a particular prospect about buying something. You could respond with a quotation, and that quotation could be out there for them, and then finally place an order. Now, it doesn't have to be 4 steps. It can be 5 or 6 steps, but you need to map out the chunks, I guess, in your sales process. You need to include some of the deal info, so it could be just what the particular opportunity is about, or a particular product or something. And then, really importantly, you need to understand what's the probability of actually winning that job or that particular sale, right? So what's the probability of getting that sale? And in my pipelines, I always, and I'll give you some guidelines in a minute, but I always get people to put low probability. The further it is from being a done deal, the lower the probability, so it doesn't skew things. So you put a low probability, you estimate the value of that particular sale to you and your business, and then you multiply that estimate sale by the probability to come up with the probability of the sale. All right, the probability of the fees, if you like. And then I track that probability of fees against my income matrix, and I'll show you that. Now, we're going to give you a simple pipeline soon, but let me just take you to one here now. So just bear with me while we jump through the technology here to find it. All right, and there we go. So let me just expand that a bit. So here's an example pipeline that I use. As I mentioned, down here, down the bottom left-hand corner, we have ideas, scoping, proposals, and then projects won as we move up. The client name or the project name or whatever here. And then the probabilities. And you can see down the bottom here, low probability rising up to 100% probability when I've won the job, and the lost ones go down the bottom. All right, so this is a pipeline that I would use. It's not my pipeline, but it's just an example. I've thrown some numbers in. So what we do is track the probability, which is 100% times 36,000 gives us 36,000. Down here, it's 50% of 50,000 gives us 25,000. Now, this probability of fees here is the pipeline, all right? And they're the pipeline numbers that I track. the reason for doing that is if you look at it, so in this example here, we've got $645,000 in fees that we've already won. We've got another $191,000 in fees at the proposal stage. We've got another $132,000 at the scoping stage, and we've got another $15,000 at the ideas phase. If you add those all up, you get to $984,000. If our target's $1.5 million, then we're still $500,000 short. Now, the reason why I do that is because if you look over here, if you just add these ones up, which is what lots of people do, they just simply add up the contract values or the estimate. You come up with $2 million and you go, well, we're home and hosed. You know, my target's 1.5 million. I've already pulled $2 million in sales. I'm laughing. But it's not until you actually look at the it's not until you look at the figures here that you realize you only had 984,000. So getting the pipeline right is really important. And we've got to click, I guess, with the information we're going to send you out after the webinar, we're going to send you a link to a video which takes you through this in a bit more detail on how to construct one. All right, so that's how to build a pipeline. As I mentioned, my guidelines for doing that are here. So as I mentioned, the lower down, the further away we are from successful sale, the lower the probability. And so I keep those, down those ideas at 2 to 5%, so they don't distort my pipeline too much. Moving up to things, and a written proposal, I don't have more than 80% probability, even if the client's actually said, yeah, we're going to start, and occasionally we've already started. Until we get the check in the bank, then I don't actually consider a job as won. So that's how you set up a sales pipeline. There are plenty of other ways to do them. They all use a similar methodology and a similar structure, and you need to adapt it for your particular situation in your business. If you're selling a lot of retail sales and that sort of stuff, you may have sales pipeline could be via distributors and channels and that sort of stuff, and you can start doing forecast orders and those sorts of things. So it's a more complex system, but for most businesses, it's reasonably simple. All right, so getting to the end now. So today was all about linking strategy to action. So make sure you have a clear marketing strategy. Break it down into an income matrix so you get some realistic chunks that you can get your head around. Use that income matrix then to create a promotional plan. So what are the 3 things you need to focus on? You need to focus on doing some networking, you need to focus on some one-on-one activity, and then you also need to focus on doing some broadcast activity. Don't just rely on broadcast activity to get you out of the hole. And then lastly, convert all that into a sales pipeline and use that sales pipeline to track activity in your business. So in my pipeline, I actually copy things from one line from one level in the spreadsheet up and move it up and follow it and use it as a live document to help me drive things in my business. So it's really important. All right, well, that's the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much. If you're looking for more information, we've got plenty of resources on our website. So I mentioned at the start, you can either contact us through the sbdbusiness.com.au website or through horticulturethenextgeneration.com.au. On those websites, we've got a free business diagnostic. We've got a recorded webinar library. We now have 19 webinars in that library, and there's some great stuff in there. Range of short videos on our YouTube channel, but they're also on the websites, and blog articles on a whole range of topics from, the future of industry through to how to hire a virtual assistant. So a whole range of stuff there. Please go and view it. If you'd like more personal service and you'd like us to actually help you to implement some of this stuff we've talked about here today, really happy to help you out. We have a range of options for doing that, and we can customize a program for you and your business. And we'll do that using a blend of coaching, training, and online resources. I work with people across Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, so distance and location are not a challenge for us. We will just use the technology to give us plenty of leverage. All right, if you want to contact me about any of this stuff, I'm happy to talk to you about it. So please either email me at russell@sbdbusiness.com.au or give me a call on my mobile phone, or you can also contact us through the website. So thank you very much for attending today. As I mentioned, we'll have another webinar in about a month's time. I wish you every success in the coming weeks. Make sure you apply this stuff and get it happening in your business and start really converting some of your strategies into action. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.